My daughter's fiancé was the kind of man fathers are supposed to dream about. Ambitious, handsome, and seemingly wealthy. But when he checked his phone for the fourth time in 10 minutes during a family dinner, the hairs on the back of my neck stood up. Everyone else saw a dedicated executive. I saw a man waiting for a getaway car. At the engagement party, he stood before our friends and family, raising a glass to brag that he had just been promoted to vice president of the very company I had secretly built from the ground up. He smirked at me, thinking I was just a senile old pensioner. But then I quietly told him to refresh his inbox. He read the subject line: termination of employment, embezzlement investigation. I watched the blood drain from his face, and before I explain how we got to that explosive moment, I need to take you back to where the deception began. Whatever gut instinct just warned you that something was wrong, hold on to it. Before we dive into the wreckage, please take a quick second to like this story if you believe trust is earned, not given. It really helps more people find this truth. Also, go ahead and comment below where you are listening from today. I'd love to know who is with me on this journey. And if you haven't already, please subscribe to the channel so you don't miss out on future stories of justice served. To understand how a father finds himself dismantling his daughter's life to save it, we have to rewind to the day Chelsea brought him home. It had been 4 years since my wife, Alice, lost her battle with an autoimmune disease. And in that time, I had become a ghost in my own home. We lived in a sprawling, historic property just outside of Chicago. A place that used to echo with laughter and dinner parties, but now mostly collected dust and silence. I had sold my car, canceled my club memberships, and let the garden grow wild. To the outside world, and even to my daughter Chelsea, I was Murphy, the retired computer programmer who was slowly fading away into grief and irrelevance. Chelsea was the light that kept the shadows from swallowing me completely. She came over every Sunday, bringing groceries and stories from her job at a marketing agency in the city. She worried about me constantly, her eyes always scanning the room for signs of decline, unwashed dishes, unpaid bills, or just the heavy air of loneliness. I played the part well, mostly because it wasn't an act. I really was tired. But when she told me she had met someone special at a tech conference, I saw a spark in her that I hadn't seen in years. She told me his name was Brody, a senior director at Apex Dynamics. That name sent a jolt through my system that I had to hide immediately. Apex Dynamics was the behemoth I knew better than the back of my own hand. Brody walked into my house wearing a suit that cost more than my first car and a watch that gleamed aggressively under the dining room lights. He was 31, according to Chelsea, with a jawline that could cut glass and a smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. He firmly shook my hand, gripping it just a little too hard, a subtle dominance play that men like him use to assert territory. "Mr. Murphy," he said, his voice smooth and practiced. "Chelsea talks about you all the time. She says you used to dabble in coding back in the day." "Dabble," I repeated, keeping my expression flat. "Yes, just a bit of programming here and there. Nothing like what you young fellows do now." I shuffled toward the kitchen to get the coffee, playing up the stiff hips and the slightly confused demeanor. Brody sat at the table, checking his phone immediately. He told us he was pulling in $250,000 a year base salary, plus stock options. He talked about synergy and disruptive deliverables with the confidence of a man who believed his own press release. Chelsea looked at him with absolute adoration, and that terrified me. Love can make the smartest people blind, and my daughter was staring directly into the sun. "This architecture is stunning," Brody said later, wandering into the hallway while Chelsea was plating dessert. He ran a hand along the original oak wainscoting. "You don't see craftsmanship like this anymore. What is this, a 1920s build? In this zip code, a lot of this size has to be sitting at, what, 1.2 million? Maybe 1.5 with the land?" "I'm not sure," I mumbled, adjusting my glasses. "I haven't looked at the market since Alice passed. We bought it for a song 30 years ago." "You should really get it appraised," Brody pressed, his eyes scanning the vaulted ceiling not with appreciation, but with calculation. "Assets like this shouldn't just sit idle. You could leverage the equity, reinvest it. I know some people." It was the second time he had mentioned the value of my assets that evening. The first was a probing question about whether I had long-term care insurance or if I planned to sell the house to move into a facility. It takes a certain kind of predator to size up a man's net worth while eating his roast beef. I kept my head down, nodding vaguely, letting him believe I was just a confused old man sitting on a gold mine he didn't understand. But inside, the dormant circuits of my brain were waking up. After they left that night, the house fell silent again. But my mind was loud. I sat in my study, a room I hadn't properly used in years. Alice's reading glasses were still sitting on the side table, exactly where she had left them. I picked them up, feeling the cool metal frames. She always told me I was too cynical, that I looked for bugs in the code of human nature where there weren't any. "Murphy," she would say, "let people be good until they prove otherwise." But I couldn't do that. Not with Chelsea. She was the only piece of Alice I had left. If I was wrong about Brody, I would be the grumpy, jealous father who couldn't let go. But if I was right, he was a wolf waiting for me to die so he could feast. I felt a heavy knot in my stomach, the burden of a parent who knows they might have to break their child's heart to save their life. If you have ever had to make a choice that you knew would make your child hate you, even temporarily, just to keep them safe, please subscribe to the channel. It's a lonely road to walk, and it helps to know I'm not the only one who would burn down the world to protect my family. I walked over to the large painting of a ship on the far wall and swung it aside to reveal a wall safe. My fingers remembered the combination instantly. Inside, alongside our passports and deeds, was a laptop. Not the sluggish desktop I kept in the living room to maintain my cover, but a high-performance machine with military-grade encryption. I powered it up. The glow of the monitors illuminated the dust motes dancing in the dark room. I wasn't just a retired programmer. I was the founder and former CEO of Apex Dynamics. I had built the company in the 90s, scaling it from a basement operation to a global leader in supply chain logistics software. When Alice got sick, I stepped down completely. I sold the majority of my shares, cashed out for $900 million, and vanished into anonymity to spend her final years holding her hand. I buried the CEO identity because it attracted parasites. I wanted peace. But now, I typed in a user ID that hadn't been active in 48 months. The system flagged it, initiated a biometric scan, and then a green prompt appeared. "Welcome back, Administrator." It took me less than 20 minutes to pull Brody's personnel file. The digital footprint he left was messy, arrogant. The man sitting at my dinner table claimed to be 31 with an MBA from Wharton. The file on my screen told a different story. Brody was 35. He didn't have an MBA. He had a bachelor's degree from a mid-tier state school and a certificate from an online business course. He wasn't a senior director either. He was a mid-level account manager. The salary he bragged about was inflated by nearly 60%. Lying about your age or your job title to impress a date is pathetic. But it's not necessarily criminal. It's vanity. I could almost forgive vanity if it meant he truly loved my daughter. But as I dug deeper, scrolling through the metadata of his work history, I found the red flags I was dreading. He had bounced between 3 departments in 2 years. His performance reviews noted issues with compliance and unauthorized client expensing. He wasn't a high flyer. He was a liability that hadn't been fired yet. The real horror show wasn't in the corporate database. It was in the shadow logs. I used my root access to look at his internal communications and flagged security incidents. Brody was currently under internal investigation. He had been suspended pending a review of $55,000 that had gone missing from a client holding account. He wasn't working from home on Fridays. He was barred from the building. I switched tactics and ran a deep scrape on his social media, bypassing his privacy settings. I found a secondary Instagram account under a pseudonym. There were photos from just 3 weeks ago. Brody in a hotel room in Miami with a woman who definitely wasn't Chelsea. The captions were nauseating. "Closing the deal soon," he wrote in the comments. "Retirement comes early." A friend of his had commented, "Is the old man out of the picture yet?" Brody had replied with a laughing emoji. I sat back in my leather chair, my hands trembling with a cold, focused rage. He wasn't just cheating on her. He was counting the days until I died. The urge to call Chelsea right then and there was overwhelming. I wanted to scream the truth into the phone, send her the screenshots, and demand she kick him out. But I paused. Chelsea was stubborn, just like her mother. She was in the honeymoon phase, blinded by the ring and the promise of a future. If I came at her with accusations, Brody would spin it. He would say I was invading his privacy, that I was a jealous old man trying to control her. He would gaslight her into thinking the investigation was a misunderstanding or a corporate conspiracy. I needed undeniable public proof. I needed to corner him in a way that left no room for his silver tongue to wiggle out. He was playing a game of perception, building a facade of success and stability. To beat him, I had to play the same game, but better. I had to let him think he was winning right up until the moment the floor dropped out. It was a cruel thing to do to Chelsea, to let her live a lie for a few more weeks. But a quick, sharp pain is better than a lifetime of slow poison. The next morning, I made a call to the one person at Apex Dynamics who knew my true identity. Karen, the current VP of Operations. She had been my first hire 30 years ago, a brilliant strategist who could bury a body or save a company with equal efficiency. "Murphy?" Her voice cracked with disbelief. "I haven't heard your voice since the funeral. Is everything okay?" "I need a favor, Karen. A big one, and it needs to stay off the books." I explained the situation. Brody, Chelsea, the lies, the embezzlement. I heard her sharp intake of breath on the other end. "That little weasel," she hissed. "I know him. We've been building a case against him for months. But HR is dragging their feet on the legal filings. He's been telling people in the office he's about to marry into quiet money. We didn't know he meant you." "I need you to accelerate the termination," I said, my voice steady. "But I need the timing to be specific. And before that, I need you to feed his ego. Can you approve a fake promotion notice? Just an internal draft, something he can see but hasn't been officially broadcasted?" Karen hesitated. "You want to bait him?" "Murphy, that's dangerous. If he thinks he has more power, he might try to access more funds." "Lock him out of the accounts," I instructed. "Give him a title but zero access. Make him think he's been made VP of Strategic Innovation or some fluff title. I want him to feel untouchable. I want him so arrogant that he makes a spectacle of himself. Consider it done, Karen said. I'll draft the email. When do you want the hammer to drop? The engagement party is in 2 weeks, I said. I'll text you the signal. Hanging up, I felt a strange mix of guilt and adrenaline. I was manipulating my own company and my daughter's life. But I remembered the comment on his Instagram. Is the old man out of the picture yet? I wasn't just fighting for Chelsea's heart. I was fighting for her inheritance, her future, and my own dignity. A week before the party, Chelsea came over to help me tidy up the garden. We were raking leaves when she stopped, leaning on the handle of the rake, looking uncomfortable. Dad, she started, not meeting my eyes. Brody was mentioning, he thinks maybe we should have a look at your portfolio. He's worried that with the market fluctuations, you might be losing value on your savings. I stopped raking. Is that so? He just cares, Dad. He says that sometimes, when people get older, they get taken advantage of by banks. He wants to consolidate things for you. Maybe get power of attorney just for the financial stuff, so you don't have to worry about bills. The audacity was breathtaking. He was already priming her to hand over the keys to the kingdom. I appreciate his concern, honey, I said, forcing a smile. But I've managed this long. Let's get through the engagement party first, okay? She looked relieved to drop the subject. Okay. He's really excited about the party, Dad. He wants to make a big announcement. I bet he does, I thought. I bet he does. The night of the engagement party, my house was transformed. Caterers moved through the crowd with trays of champagne and hors d'oeuvres. 50 people, Chelsea's friends, colleagues, and a few of my old neighbors, filled the living room and the patio. The air was thick with perfume and expensive cologne. Brody was in his element. He wore a tuxedo that looked brand new, holding court near the fireplace. He had his arm around Chelsea's waist, possessing her rather than holding her. I stood in the corner, wearing my faded cardigan and comfortable slacks, sipping a soda water. To everyone in the room, I was the kindly, slightly out-of-touch father-in-law, a prop in Brody's grand production. He caught my eye and gave me a patronizing nod, raising his glass slightly. He thought he had already won. He thought the house, the money, the girl, it was all just a signature away. As the evening peaked, Brody clinked a spoon against his champagne glass. The room hushed. The lighting was dimmed, casting him in a warm, heroic glow. Thank you all for coming, Brody began, his voice projecting perfectly. Tonight is about love, obviously. I am the luckiest man alive to be marrying Chelsea. The crowd awed on cue. Chelsea beamed, squeezing his hand. But tonight is also about the future, Brody continued, puffing out his chest. Chelsea deserves the world, and I intend to give it to her. We've been looking at properties in the south of France for the honeymoon, and maybe a vacation home. A murmur of impressed jealousy rippled through the guests. I watched him closely. He was high on the lie. He needed this validation like a drug. And to ensure that future, he said, pausing for effect, I have some professional news to share. I didn't want to say anything until it was official, but hard work pays off. He pulled his phone out of his pocket, checking it theatrically. I have just received confirmation from the board. He looked around the room, making eye contact with the most important guests. As of this week, I am the new Vice President of Strategic Innovation at Apex Dynamics. Applause broke out. Chelsea gasped, her hands flying to her mouth. Brody, you didn't tell me. I wanted to surprise you, baby, he said, kissing her cheek. youngest VP in the company's history. It comes with a significant raise and a seat at the big table. I stepped forward from the shadows of the corner. The applause died down as people noticed me moving toward the center. "That is quite the achievement, Brody," I said, my voice cutting through the lingering chatter. "Thanks, Murphy." Brody smiled condescendingly. "Maybe I can get you a tour of the executive suite now." "Strategic innovation," I mused aloud. "That's interesting, because Apex Dynamics dissolved that department 4 years ago during the restructuring." The room went dead silent. Brody's smile faltered just for a fraction of a second before he recovered. "Well, Murphy, things change. You've been out of the game a long time. They brought it back for me." "Did they?" I asked, taking another step closer. I pulled my own phone out. "That's strange, because I was under the impression that the only active file on your desk was a compliance audit." "Dad, what are you doing?" Chelsea whispered, looking terrified. "Don't ruin this." "I'm not ruining it, honey. I'm saving it." I looked directly at Brody. At my daughter's engagement party, her fiancé bragged about his promotion. Then I said, "Check email." Brody laughed, a nervous, brittle sound. "I don't need to check my email, old man. I know what I'm worth." "Check it," I commanded, my voice dropping an octave, losing the tremble of the old man and replacing it with the steel of a CEO. "Right now." Something in my tone made him obey. Maybe it was the sudden authority, or maybe it was the fear bubbling up in his gut. He unlocked his phone. I had texted Karen the signal 30 seconds ago. He tapped the screen. I watched his eyes scan the text. The color didn't just fade from his face. It vanished. His jaw went slack. What is this?" he stammered. "Read it out loud," I said. I can't," he whispered. "Then I will," I said, reciting the email I had helped draft. "Effective immediately. Your employment at Apex Dynamics is terminated for cause. The legal department has filed formal charges regarding the embezzlement of $55,000 from client accounts. Security is en route to escort you from the premises should you attempt to enter." "Embezzlement?" Chelsea's voice was small, broken. She pulled her hand away from his as if he had burned her. "It's a mistake," Brody shouted, looking around the room frantically. "Someone hacked my account. This is insane." "Murphy, you don't know what you're talking about." "I know exactly what I'm talking about," I said calmly. "And I know about the 50 grand. And I know you're 35, not 31. And I know about the girl in Miami." The guests were whispering furiously now. Some were backing away. "How could you possibly know any of that?" Brody sneered, his charm dissolving into malice. "You're just a washed-up coder gardening in the suburbs." "I'm not just a coder, Brody," I said, straightening my back and shedding the years of grief I'd been wearing like a heavy coat. "I'm the founder of Apex Dynamics. I still own the majority of the voting shares. And I personally authorized your termination 3 minutes ago." The revelation hit the room like a physical shockwave. Chelsea stared at me, her eyes wide, processing the impossible truth. Brody looked like he had been struck by lightning. You own Apex?" he choked out. "I built it," I said. "And I stepped down to take care of my dying wife. I learned that money doesn't matter, but character does. And you, son, have neither." "Get out," Chelsea said. Her voice was shaking, but it was clear. "Chelsea, baby, listen." Brody reached for her. "Get out," she screamed, tears finally spilling over. "Get out of my father's house." Brody looked at the angry faces surrounding him. He realized the game was over. He didn't fight, he didn't apologize. He just turned and fled. The tuxedo that looked so sharp an hour ago, now looking like a costume on a child. The party ended abruptly. The guests left quietly, offering awkward condolences. When the door closed on the last of them, Chelsea collapsed onto the sofa, sobbing into her hands. I sat beside her, wrapping my arm around her shoulders. "I'm so sorry I didn't tell you sooner," I whispered. "I needed you to see who he really was." "I feel so stupid," she cried. "I almost married a criminal." "You're not stupid," I told her. "You have a big heart." He preyed on that. That's his sin, not yours. Months later, I gave Brody a lifeline. Not because he deserved it, but because Alice would have wanted me to. I sent a lawyer to him with a deal: repay the stolen money over 5 years, and we wouldn't press criminal charges. He took a job at a help desk in another state. He was starting over at the bottom, where he belonged. As for Chelsea and me, we started a new business together, a consultancy firm. I stopped hiding who I was. Family is the only wealth that matters. We have to protect it fiercely, even if it means hurting the ones we love, to save them from a burning building. If you agree that a parent's job never truly ends, please hit that subscribe button. It helps us share these stories with the people who need to hear them most. Stay safe, and always trust your gut.